Okay, we line everybody up.
This is it, everyone. Be ready on my signal.
Moment of truth.
2012's over. We survived the apocalypse, we celebrated the new year, and a Kardashian's now pregnant, so that's makes us 2 for 3. Well, January is the time to look back, the time to say, what were the best games last year? What were the ones that were most memorable? Now, being one guy, I wasn't able to get to everything I wanted to, but I think I was able to make a big enough dent to have a justifiable list for the best games last year. So I scrapped reviews, numbered 1 through 10, and shuffled it around endlessly to get to this. Here are my top 10 games for the year of 2012. Sure, it shipped with a few bugs, had an ending that produced more questions than answers, and I got stuck in a tree running from a possessed wolf. Scariest 5 minutes of my life. Regardless, Assassin's Creed 3 ventured into a territory that few games actually went by taking place during the American Revolution. Ubisoft always manages to provide a perfect snapshot of the time period with this franchise, and taking part in infamous battles or interacting with iconic figures only read about in history books was something special. It was not without its downfalls, but ultimately the multitude of side content and visual polish made it fun to simply run around and mess with redcoats. Plus, the naval combat is the closest thing I can get to my perfect pirate dream game. I'd be remiss if I didn't add Spec Ops: The Line to the list, simply because while the gameplay was good, the story to this game was phenomenal. I've never seen a military shooter that actually showed soldiers who were being affected by the horrors around them. These cocky, battle-hardened cadets are soon turned into shells of their former selves, and subtleties like the grittiness in their voice when shouting commands as the game progressed, or snide remarks they made back and forth to each other really added to the tension and hopelessness of the situation. It was a game you wanted to dive back into upon completion just to compare to how it all began with how it all ended. The setting was visually stunning, the voice acting was top-notch, and that certain event that happens in the middle of the game? Unforgettable. Syndicate is one of those overlooked gems for the year. Usually when you take a game from a decade ago and you refurbish it for modern times, it doesn't translate well, but Starbreeze Studios took this game in a direction it needed to go. There's a certain polish to it that's just undeniable, both aesthetically and in gameplay. The breaching aspect in particular during firefights almost felt like a game within a game. It kept firefights hectic, and the tight controls had you grabbing for cover and hacking enemy shields with ease. Plus, the co-op was one of the most entertaining of the year, with addictive leveling and equipment customization that kept you coming back for more just to get that one more attachment to your gun. And the most appealing aspect had to be the fantastic sound design for this game. Every single action you did would send a huge thud through the subwoofer and was ultimately satisfying. It was fast, simple fun for everyone that played it. All 5 of us. Super Hexagon is a lot like Dark Souls, except instead of dragons, you're fighting walls. That was a terrible comparison, but the idea and the concept remains the same. The game is incredibly difficult. There's no normal, there's no easy. You start out on hard and it only gets worse from there. But once you pass that 60-second mark on each level and get to the next difficulty, there's a sense of satisfaction that you just can't compare. It was the extreme difficulty that keeps you coming back for more as you slowly improve with each attempt, noticing certain patterns and improving your timing and reflexes. It's a game that will punch you in the face with its difficulty, but pick you back up with its incredibly catchy music just to punch you in the face again. I never got to play through the first two Max Payne games, and I instantly regretted that after playing through Max Payne 3. This is one of the most enjoyable action games I played in a very long time. I love the storytelling for this game, the whole noir, cop drama, monologuing to yourself as you walk through the hallways. It made every moment incredibly interesting. Firefights were easy to get the hang of and rarely lessened in satisfaction, due in no small part to the always entertaining bullet time. The most impressive aspect of the game was how well the single player translated into a multiplayer experience. Just knowing that whenever you trigger bullet time, someone on another monitor is freaking out because their entire world is slowing is something few multiplayer games ever do. It's a game that just never lessens on the action. It has a lot to offer, and it is one of the best action games that I've played this year. It is hard to say goodbye, and no other game proved that more this year than Mass Effect 3. This is one of the most memorable and incredible space epics you could possibly ask for in a video game. The fight against the Reapers took you to vistas that were stripped from art galleries, and it was backed by one of the most powerful original soundtracks this year. The constant tone of sorrow and desperation only fueled your desire to see this game through to the end, and the skirmishes towards your goal were never disappointing. The combat was fine-tuned, the dialogue was at its best like any BioWare title, and love or hate the ending, it was one of the most memorable conclusions to a trilogy that many won't soon forget. Or forgive. I'm not usually a big strategy game buff, but the talk around XCOM sparked my interest this year, and I did not regret picking it up at all. The uncertainty in combat and micromanagement gave this overall heightened tension to the game that kept you intrigued as to what could possibly happen next. It puts you in a role that makes you feel like a commander, deciding where to prioritize resources, whether to use those to aid other countries, which missions to take. And that's just in the management side. The battles are even more tense as you never know if an army of aliens could be waiting in the next room, and you stare at that percentage to hit rate when you fire at something, wondering if you should take the shot. It's easy to grasp, complex enough to offer variety, and personalized enough to where you actually feel the hurt when one of your customizable soldiers dies in battle. Buzz Lightyear didn't make it. I never expected a downloadable game to be so high up on the list, but Journey is a very, very obvious exception to the typical formula. There's just no other game out there like it. This was a welcome break from high scores, headshots, and those grocery lists of side quests to just get lost in a world. The brilliant visual design melded perfectly with the hauntingly beautiful original soundtrack. Quality trumped quantity, and the simple controls and playstyle made it easy to get the hang of, so that even the most casual player could float through the desert with eloquence. It was much more of an experience than it was a game, and a lot of it was left to self-interpretation, but that's what made it so perfect. It stuck with you. Even after playing through it 6 times, it didn't lose its impact. And it'll probably be the only time you'll ever really want to climb a mountain. Cry 3 drops you on an island, gives you a very brief tutorial, and then says, have fun. It became one of the most entertaining open world experiences that you could ever ask for, and I opted to walk to many of my destinations in lieu of fast travel just to see what else I could run into. The island is alive with continual firefights, a host of dangerous wildlife, and vehicles just beckoning you to take the helm. The open world felt complemented by the open gameplay approach, being as stealthy, strategic, or loud as you could possibly want to. Not to mention it now has one of my favorite new villains in a video game franchise ever.
Have I failed to entertain you?
Seriously, Voss is amazing. It's an explosive, gorgeous thrill ride that will hook you in and keep you coming back for more with its thousands of collectibles, fleshed out co-op experience, and a multiplayer where the winning team's top 3 players get to humiliate the losing team's top player. It's hilarious.
Let's go. Stay close to me.
Telltale Games essentially took the idea of people yelling at their television screens when characters would make stupid decisions in an apocalyptic situation or horror movie and said, you know what, you decide what happens. I can safely say this is one of the few games where it was morally gray and not so much black and white as far as how decisions would go. I stopped on multiple occasions trying to think of what I wanted to do and how I wanted to do it. It then became the perfect water cooler game, because my friends that were playing this were making completely different decisions than I was, and our arguing back and forth made me appreciate the game even more. Telltale also knew how to create some of the most interesting and well fleshed out characters. They would change episode from episode as this apocalypse went on, and you never knew who was going to go crazy, and it was just such a back and forth as far as who's on your side, who's not on your side. Your decisions had weight, they had impact, and the episodic content made you anticipate every single episode release. And this is by far the most emotionally invested I've ever been in a game. Even the hardest of hearts have to admit tearing up a few times. All in all, this was just a total package of a game that was unlike anything I'd played before. And without a doubt, Walking Dead became my game of the year for 2012.
I'm glad I have you.
Me too.